Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Hello again, welcome back to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers. My name's Oliver and I'm an addict. And today on the line we have a guest, wonderful guest, Liv. Say hello, Liv.
Good morning, Oliver. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. We're going to get straight into it. So what we've got to talk about today is the AA's daily reflection for October the 19th. And the topic or the heading is AA's main tap route. The principle that we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat is the main taproot from which our whole society has sprung and flowered. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 21-22. Defeated and knowing it, I arrived at the doors of AA, alone and afraid of the unknown. A power outside of myself had picked me up off my bed, guided me to the phone book and then to the bus stop and through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. Once inside AA, I experienced a sense of being loved and accepted, something I had not felt since early childhood. May I never lose the sense of wonder I experienced on that first evening with AA, the greatest event of my entire life. Interesting. That really brings up step one to me of complete defeat and surrender. And that's how the rest of our recoveries. That's the beginning of the rest of our lives, basically, in recovery. And what does that bring up for you, Liv?
To be honest, Oliver, that just reading about phone books and bus stops. I'm old enough to have used a phone book and a bus stop, and I'm also filled with just the memories of years and years of pain and frustration that was completely unnecessary, but I didn't know that the 12-step recovery was for regular people. I'd heard of it in movies and pop culture, but I didn't know it was accessible, and I didn't understand how it worked. And I'd gone through to a couple of meetings over a couple of decades, and I'd stick my head in, sit at the back of the room and be terribly confused and feel quite frightened of all of these people and not understand what they were doing. It just seemed like some type of religious cult, and my brain could not wrap around what was going on in that room, and my answer to anything difficult in my life was to run away. And I was fortunate enough, when I was absolutely broken down, a lot older, in my 40s, to be in a detox unit and have someone do what we call H&I, when someone comes and visits a hospital and institution from AA. And these two people came into the ward and explained their story and taught me about 12-step recovery, and I couldn't have been more powerless in that moment and ready to listen to the message that they had. So I don't know if I answered your question, but just, feeling quite emotional at that memory of being so powerless so often, so many times in my life, and seeking and searching the world for answers to what ails me, which was addiction, alcoholism, and powerlessness.
Yeah, that's so strong, and something that I could seriously identify with as well. And I think I just want to stop you and say, look, sometimes that suffering and that experience is, I think you said it was pointless or unnecessary. And we don't have a time machine to erase that. But what we can say, and a way to change the sort of viewpoint of that is to say that this is from my experience. You know, I used for 10 years and I had to go through all that to get to where I am today. And without that, I would not have gotten to where I am today. You know, that's I had 12-step recovery stuff suggested to me multiple times when I was trying to seek solace through the other things, you know, psychology, psychiatry, medicine, going to see a counsellor every week, and I'd spend the entire session talking about how I was struggling and how I wished I could stop, or I wished I could control how much I was using, and why can't I do that? And you know, I'd often have been using before I even went into the session, and my therapist would say, "Oh, what about going to NA? What about trying AA? What about something like that?" And I'd say, "Oh, I don't qualify like that. I'm not you know, I'm not in the gutter. I'm not a junkie, you know." Or so I thought, you know, you know, and there is that stigma around it, is that it's for people like that, and it's what you see in the movies, exactly like what you mentioned. It's for the, you know, the you know, the war veterans who are scarred and who drink all day, you know, and that's just that couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah.
And that we're all welcome. And on a previous episode, we were talking about how everybody is welcome in the 12-step fellowships, in AA, in NA, that if you have the desire to stop using, then congratulations, you're a member, you know. So
and I love that because you have such a broad range of people, and that was another mistake I made in those earlier years, that I would go to one meeting and think, no, these are not my people, this is not for me, and I would leave. My historical habit would be to search out a meeting on a Sunday afternoon because I was always going to get clean on a Monday.
Yeah.
And, you know, and wonder why there would be half a dozen people in some sort of church hall, and I'd just look at them and think exactly that, you know, the most broken down of people, and that just wasn't my experience this time around. It was one thing that I was told in the detox unit, and it stuck in my mind, and it said, make sure you visit 6 different meetings before you make up your mind.
Absolutely.
And that changed everything for me. You know, I came out of the detox unit on a 10 a.m. on a weekday morning, and I knew I was going to go to a meeting. I had my little booklet, and I went to a midday meeting that day in South Yarra, and I felt like I'd walked into some sort of, you know, meeting in downtown Miami, a bunch of Scientologists. They were completely different to the, you know, the broken down drunks that I'd seen at the church hall. It was like, who are these glamorous people? They look so well and healthy.
And that's the thing. Every single one of us, you know, in order to get to that point where you consider doing something like going to a meeting, we're all defeated. You don't decide to just give up, you know, an hour or an hour and a half of your time to sit in a, you know, community center with a bunch of random people because you think it might be a bit of fun. You know, there's some serious defeat and surrender there to get you to that point. And when I was suggested that I do it, I wasn't ready. And that's why I had to go through all that time of suffering, because I was ultimately just getting ready to get to that point. And, you know, for you, we talked about you have just celebrated a milestone. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. 4 or 5 days ago, I celebrated my first birthday in recovery, which is a big deal in our world. So thank you. And, you know, that took me 3 years to obtain because I was about to say unfortunately, but that's not necessary. Relapse is part of my story. And that's the most incredible thing about the rooms of 12-step is that the people around me never gave up on me. The one thing I never stopped doing was attending meetings. I never stopped working with my sponsor. And that's a topic in itself, you know, as you would probably know. I had many sponsors in the first couple of years of recovery, and that's okay. But when I finally found the sponsor that worked for me, I was able to reach that milestone of 1 year, and then I could, really look into my life and work with the 12 steps. I mean, we are a 12-step program, and the first 2 years I had a lot of trouble putting pen to paper or, fingers to a keyboard. But in the last year I've been able to do that and find a peace that I never knew possible that allowed me to stop picking up a drug.
Absolutely. And, that's just the bottom line of it, is it when you feel that defeat, that's what you get. You get that serenity and that freedom. We'll talk about this more after the break. Thank you.
You're listening to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Ranges Private. Like what you hear? Then visit us at www.rehab.melbourne for more shows.
Welcome back to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Ranges. I'm with Liv, and we were just talking about the fact that we come in and we surrender, and through this time of growth and where we surrender, it gives us the foundation to build a recovery. And many of our listeners, Liv, will be on that early road of they've made the decision to get treatment and hand it over to be on their control so that they can take that first step, and they're on that road now. They've just maybe perhaps just left treatment, or they've been out of treatment for a little while. And what would you offer them? What would you say to them if you could? What would you say to that person who's maybe 60 days clean, 30 days clean, 90 days clean, a few months or 6 months? What would you say?
First of all, congratulations. And second of all is just to go kindly and go gently, and just remember that, we just have today. I think I look back at that time for myself, and I was full of so much anxiety. I knew that I had to surrender my power over to another, and for me, who I'd been in control for my entire life, and left to my own devices, I will put a drug or something inside me. So I knew that I had to find a sponsor who was living a life that I wanted for myself. I knew that I wanted a sponsor. I knew that I needed someone who I could communicate with once, twice, 3 times a day. And I knew that I needed to find someone that I respected.
Yeah.
And, I found a sponsor that first day that I came out of the unit. Wow. And that was fantastic, but one thing I did learn is, and there's something I always tell people when they come out, is don't be afraid to choose a sponsor, because it's okay to let go of them too. I let go of my first sponsor after 2 weeks, which was quite traumatic, because I felt like I was breaking up with somebody. And, it's just not the case, It's, any sponsor is better than no sponsor, but the moment, in your heart or your gut that it doesn't seem quite right, or you find someone that has something that you want, and I just think that's so important, because I know a lot of people are very hesitant about connecting with a sponsor.
Yeah.
And that's why it's also so important that I went to a lot of meetings in the early days. And, in the current climate, we're doing our meetings on Zoom. But it's still very possible to get sponsors. And I just can't underestimate, as addicts, we just want to do everything ourselves. We want to isolate, and we think that we know ourselves better than anybody else. But I think the best thing I ever learned was that, being told you are just a garden variety addict, you are not special, you have nothing, you have done nothing that any of us haven't done. And, that in itself gave me a good sense of freedom. And also knowing that, I never needed to be alone again. Yeah. I literally could spend all day on the telephone with 5 people, 10 people, 20 people. And sometimes I needed to do that to stop myself from picking up a drug in those early days.
Yeah, well, they say they say a problem shared, even outside recovery circles, that a problem shared is a problem halved. And every time we seek advice or just to share our experience with another person, preferably in recovery, it just seems to be a little bit easier. And, I've said it before that even in the process of making these episodes, I actually feel like I'm doing a meeting every time I start on the podcast, So you basically, for the people who are new, we said, just take it easy and consider reaching out to other people, whether you're looking for a sponsor or not, something like that. Just find out somebody who you can talk to, because that is just the most important thing for me anyway. And the sponsorship thing does come in good time.
Yes,
it's vital. And I've had I've had multiple sponsors, and you're right. I've had I had the unfortunate event of a sponsor actually relapsing, and all of these things I've been able to deal with through being able to call people. So look, like that's just another thing we've touched on. There's so many different aspects of it, and that powerlessness is something that we all can identify with, and it's a place that we can use to grow from and build our recovery. So I'd like to thank you for coming in, Liv, and thank you for sharing your experience, strength and hope with us.
Thank you so much. And if I could just say one thing, and that is, do not be afraid to pick up the phone. We addicts help each other recover, and we want to speak to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.